This was supposed to be the moment, the host nation, their own World Cup, a stadium built, or rebuilt, specifically for this tournament in a city that has waited years for this exact night. USA versus Paraguay. And when the cameras panned wide during the national anthems, the shot that every broadcast uses to capture the scale, the emotion, the "this is what it's all about" moment, what they captured instead was something FIFA's broadcast partners spent the next few hours trying very hard not to show again. Empty sections, not scattered seats, sections, entire blocks of blue and red plastic, visible, unmissable, in a match that should have been the easiest sell of the entire group stage. The host nation, playing at home, and the stadium wasn't full. Let's talk about why and what it actually tells us about this World Cup. Host nation matches are supposed to be the safest tickets in football. Guaranteed atmosphere, guaranteed demand. The team every local fan wants to see in a tournament happening in their own country for the first time in 32 years for the United States specifically. If any match at this World Cup was supposed to sell out instantly, months in advance, regardless of price, it was this one. And for months, FIFA's promotional messaging leaned on exactly that assumption. Host nation matches, officials said, would anchor the tournament's commercial success. They would be the proof that American football fever was real. June 16th arrived, and the cameras told a different story. Let's be precise about what was actually visible, because vague claims of empty seats get thrown around constantly and often exaggerated. This one didn't need exaggeration. During the pre-match broadcast, wide shots of the upper tier on the stadium's east side showed what local broadcast analysts estimated at roughly 8,000 to 10,000 visibly empty seats, in sections that, for a host nation opener, should have been among the first sold. By kickoff, some of those seats had filled. Late arrivals, walk-up purchases, the normal pattern of any match. But the lower bowl, the premium sections, the ones carrying the highest price tags, told a different story. Multiple camera angles throughout the first half showed clusters of empty premium seating directly behind the goal, the kind of seats that in previous World Cups have been the first to sell and the last to empty. Social media did what social media does. Within an hour of kickoff, side-by-side comparisons began circulating. This USA match next to footage of the USA's pre-tournament friendly at Wembley back in March, where 80,000 fans created an atmosphere widely praised as electric. The contrast was stark. Wembley, full, loud, color from end to end. The actual World Cup in America, for America's team, visibly patchy in the sections that mattered most. Here's why this isn't just another empty seat story. It's the most important one yet. Every previous empty seat story from this tournament could be explained away, at least partially, by FIFA. Tampa was a warm-up, not the real thing. Dallas tickets were for matches involving nations whose fans had to travel internationally, face visa hurdles, absorb flight costs. USA versus Paraguay had none of those excuses. The fans didn't need visas. They didn't need flights. They didn't need hotel rooms in a foreign country. This was a domestic audience, in their own country, for their own team. At the opening of the biggest sporting event most of them will ever have the chance to attend without leaving home. And significant portions of the stadium were still empty. So, what does that leave as the explanation? Pricing. The same dynamic pricing model that pushed England's Category 1 tickets to £1,431 for a group stage match applied here too. To American fans, for an American team, in an American stadium. Resale tracking services showed that face value prices for the lower bowl sections at this specific match had increased by an average of 31% between the initial on-sale period and the weeks before kickoff. For a portion of the American fan base, the families, the casual fans, the people who wanted to be part of this moment but were not part of the segment FIFA's pricing model was built around, the math simply didn't work. This is the data point that should worry FIFA more than any other empty seat story from this tournament. Because if you can't fill a host nation's opening match with the host nation's own fans in the host nation's own stadiums, the problem isn't visas, it isn't travel logistics, it isn't geopolitics, it's the price. FIFA's communications team did what it has done throughout this tournament when confronted with visible evidence of empty seats. It didn't directly address it. Instead, in the post-match press notes distributed to media, FIFA highlighted total attendance figures, a number that, taken alone, sounded respectable. The stadium, FIFA's release noted, was at approximately 89% capacity by the final whistle. 89% sounds fine. until you understand what that number actually represents. 89% capacity by the final whistle includes every seat filled at any point during the match, including the walk-ups, the late arrivals, and the seats that filled only in the second half once the result was no longer in doubt. It does not reflect what the broadcast showed during the moment that mattered most. Kickoff, when the host nation's anthem played, when the cameras captured the image that was supposed to define this tournament's opening chapter for American audiences. A stadium that fills up by the end of a match it should have sold out a year in advance isn't a success story. It's a recovery story. And recovery stories, as we've discussed before with this tournament's ticketing, are not the plan. They're what happens when the plan doesn't work. Think about who was in those empty seats, or rather, who wasn't. Somewhere in the Houston area, or wherever you're watching this from if this hits close to home, there is a family. Parents who grew up watching World Cups on television, in other countries, at odd hours, because the tournament never came to them. Kids who have only ever known a world where the World Cup was something that happened over there. And for the first time in their lives, it didn't happen over there. It happened down the road, in a stadium they could drive to, and they didn't go. Not because they didn't want to, because somewhere between the moment tickets went on sale and the moment they sat down to actually buy them, the price had moved into territory that a family budget couldn't absorb. That's not a story about apathy. That's not a story about Americans not caring about football, the narrative FIFA has spent years trying to overcome. It's a story about an organization that was handed the easiest sell in its entire tournament, its own host nation's opening match, and still managed to price out the people it needed in those seats the most. Here's what USA versus Paraguay actually tells us. Every other empty seat story from this World Cup came with an asterisk: international travel, visa restrictions, currency exchange rates, geopolitical complications. This match had none of that. American fans, American team, American stadium, and the cameras still found the gaps. If dynamic pricing can price out the host nation's own supporters from the host nation's own opening matches, then the empty seats in Dallas, the 13,000 in Tampa, the vanishing tickets, the $2.3 million resale listings, none of those were edge cases. They were the system working exactly as designed. And USA versus Paraguay is the proof that the system doesn't discriminate. It prices out everyone equally, wherever they're from, whoever they're cheering for. Were you at this match, or did you watch it from home because the price didn't make sense? If you're American and you skipped your own country's World Cup opener because of cost, I want to hear that. Not because it's a gotcha, because it's the most honest data point this tournament has produced. Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. Like this, if you think FIFA needs to answer for this one specifically, host nation, host stadium, no excuses. Subscribe for full World Cup 2026 coverage through the final in New Jersey.